There is a place in the Sahara where astronauts look down and hold their breath. A perfect circle carved into the sand, 25 miles wide. Visible only from the void of space, the eye of the Sahara they call it. The Richat structure, geologists tell us it is an accident, an eroded dome of ancient rock, a geological curiosity and nothing more. But there is something they do not often mention. This perfect circle is not a single ring. It is many rings, concentric circles of stone, alternating bands of light and dark, nested within one another with mathematical precision. And 2,400 years ago, an Athenian philosopher named Plato described exactly such a place. He called it Atlantis. He gave measurements, dimensions, the width of each ring, the distance between them, the rectangular plain stretching behind it, the mountains to the north, and we dismissed him because Atlantis could not be real. But what if we were looking in the wrong place? What if the most famous lost city in human memory has been waiting in plain sight beneath the shifting sands, where the Sahara keeps its oldest secrets? What if Atlantis was never lost at all? Tonight, we measure the circles and follow them back to when the desert was blue. Let us begin with what Plato actually said. Not the myth as it has been retold, not the Hollywood sunken continent, but the words themselves, written in Athens around 360 BCE, in two dialogues that have survived 24 centuries, the Timaeus and the Critias. In these texts, Plato does something unusual for ancient philosophy. He provides measurements, specific, precise, mathematical measurements, the kind of detail you give when you are describing a place that exists, not when you are inventing a parable. Listen to how he describes the city itself, the capital of Atlantis. He tells us it was built in concentric circles, alternating bands of water and land. 3 rings of water, 2 rings of land, with the royal citadel at the very center, each ring carefully measured, each dimension recorded in stadia. The ancient Greek unit of length, the outer ring of water, Plato says, was 3 stadia wide. The first ring of land beyond it, also 3 stadia. The second ring of water, 2 stadia. The second ring of land, 2 stadia. And the innermost ring of water, 1 stadium wide, surrounding the central island, where the temple and palace stood. These are not vague descriptions, not mythological flourishes. These are the measurements an engineer would record, or a historian, copying from an older source. Now, let us convert those ancient stadia to units we understand. 1 stadium, in Greek measurement, equals approximately 185 meters, a tenth of a mile, give or take. So when Plato describes the outer ring as 3 stadia, he means roughly 550 meters wide. about a third of a mile. When he describes the land rings as 2 stadia or 3, he means specific widths between 370 and 550 meters. These are exact numbers, and for 2,000 years, scholars have read these numbers and called them fiction. Because no one had found a place that matched. No one had looked at the eye of the Sahara. The Richat structure measures 23 to 25 miles in diameter, depending on which ring you count as the outermost boundary. But it is not a simple circle. Satellite imagery reveals and ground surveys confirm that the Richat consists of multiple concentric rings, bands of different rock types. Quartzite, limestone, dolomite. Exposed by millions of years of erosion, the harder rock forms ridges. The softer rock forms valleys, creating alternating rings, light and dark, elevated and depressed, exactly as Plato described for Atlantis. But here is where the mystery deepens. When researchers began measuring these rings, when they calculated the width of each band of stone, they found something extraordinary. The dimensions matched, not approximately, not roughly, with startling precision. The innermost ring of the Richat, the collapsed volcanic center, measures close to 1 stadium in diameter. The surrounding rings, when measured from ridge to ridge, show widths between 2 and 3 stadia. The pattern Plato recorded of alternating wide and narrow bands appears in the actual geology. 3 stadia, 3 stadia, 2 stadia, 2 stadia, 1 stadium, as if someone had taken the philosopher's text and carved it into the earth, or as if Plato had been describing this exact location. Now, you might say this is coincidence. Concentric rings are not unique. Geological formations can create circular patterns, but Plato described more than just rings. He described the setting, the geography surrounding the city. And this is where the Richat structure becomes difficult to dismiss. Plato tells us that Atlantis was built on a coastal plain near the ocean, but sheltered by mountains to the north. Behind the city, to the south, stretched a great rectangular plain. He gives measurements for this plain as well. 3,000 stadia long, 2,000 stadia wide, approximately 340 miles by 230 miles. A vast agricultural region, enclosed by mountains on 3 sides, open to the sea on the 4th. This detail, this rectangular plain, has always been one of the strangest parts of the account, because plains are rarely rectangular. Nature does not draw straight lines, unless the geography itself constrains the shape. Now look at the Richat structure on a map. Look at what lies immediately to the south, the Tau Deni Basin, a massive geological depression, roughly rectangular in shape, stretching hundreds of miles across Mauritania and Mali. Its dimensions, when measured, fall within the range Plato specified, 300 to 350 miles long, 200 to 250 miles wide, bounded by highland regions, open to what was once, in a different climate, the Atlantic coastal zone. The Richat sits at the northwestern edge of this basin, overlooking it, exactly where Plato placed Atlantis in relation to its agricultural plain. And to the north of the Richat, what do we find? The Adrar Plateau, a range of rocky highlands rising abruptly from the surrounding desert, forming a natural barrier. Mountains to the north, just as the text describes. Now we have not one match, but three concentric rings of the specified dimensions, a rectangular plain to the south of the specified size, mountains to the north as described. Each element appearing where Plato said it would. At what point does coincidence become pattern? But let us continue with the text, because Plato provides even more details. He describes the materials used to build the city, 3 types of stone, quarried from the rings themselves. 1 type white, 1 black, 1 red, and in the Richat structure. Geologists have identified the exposed rock layers. Quartzite, pale and weathered, appearing white or light gray. Limestone and dolomite, darker in tone, ranging from gray to nearly black when wet. And volcanic rhyolite in the center, which oxidizes to a distinctive reddish hue. 3 types of stone, 3 colors available in the very rings where the city would have been built. Plato tells us the Atlanteans covered their walls with metals, brass and tin and orichalcum, a mysterious metal he describes as glowing like fire. This detail has troubled translators for centuries, because orichalcum is unknown, but the region around the Richat, the Adrar Plateau and surrounding areas, is geologically rich in metal ores, copper deposits, iron, even gold, the kind of mineral wealth that might support a Bronze Age civilization. Now, here is what mainstream archaeology has done with all of this. They have dismissed it, not because the measurements are wrong, not because the geography fails to match, but because Plato must have been writing allegory. Because Atlantis cannot be real. Because there is no sunken continent in the Atlantic Ocean. But notice the assumption built into that dismissal. It assumes Plato's location, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, means deep in the Atlantic. It assumes Atlantis sank beneath ocean waves. It assumes we are looking for pyramids, for obvious ruins, for monuments that scream lost civilization. But what if all of those assumptions are wrong? What if beyond the Pillars of Hercules simply meant west of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic sphere? What if the city did not sink beneath water but was buried beneath sand? What if the ruins are not obvious because they have been weathered by 10,000 years of desert wind? Then we might be looking for exactly what we have found. a series of concentric rings, perfectly preserved in stone, marked by the dimensions an ancient text provides. Visible only from space because the scale is too vast to see from the ground. Hidden in plain sight, in the last place anyone thought to look. The Sahara Desert. But this raises another question. A question that, until recently, seemed to invalidate the entire theory. How could a maritime civilization, a culture of sailors and sea trade that Plato describes, exist in the middle of the Sahara? The Richat structure sits hundreds of miles inland, surrounded by some of the driest desert on Earth. There is no ocean here, no coastline, no water at all except rare oases. For Atlantis to have existed at the Richat, the Sahara itself would need to have been different, dramatically, fundamentally different. It would need to have been blue. And here is where geology and climatology give us an answer that changes everything. Because the Sahara was blue, not metaphorically, not in myth, literally. Within the time frame Plato describes, the Sahara was covered in water. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let us first establish the foundation, the textual foundation, for what we are proposing. Because the match between Plato's measurements and the Richat structure is not just close. It is unnervingly exact. When you overlay the dimensions he provides, when you convert the stadia to kilometers and mark them on satellite imagery, the rings align. The central island, 1 stadium diameter, matches the collapsed center. The inner ring of water, 1 stadium wide, corresponds to the first depression. The first ring of land, 2 stadia, aligns with the first elevated ridge. Pattern after pattern, measurement after measurement, and the probability of this being accidental, of a Greek philosopher inventing precise numbers that coincidentally describe a real location he could never have seen. That probability approaches 0. Either Plato had access to information about this site, information preserved from an earlier age, or the universe has a strange sense of humor. But let us sit with this for a moment. Let us imagine what it would mean. If the measurements are not coincidence, it would mean that someone, at some point in the deep past, measured these rings, recorded their dimensions, preserved that information through oral tradition or written record, until it reached Solon, the Athenian lawmaker who traveled to Egypt, until it reached Plato, who wrote it down, never knowing that millennia later, we would see his words from space and recognize the place he described, the eye of the Sahara, staring back. This is the first pillar of the theory, the mathematical precision, the geographical match, the documented details that align with a real location. But a pillar cannot stand alone. To support the weight of such a claim, we need more. We need evidence that the Sahara could have supported such a city. We need evidence of water. And as we shall see, the water was there. in quantities that would make the modern world weep with envy. The Sahara remembers when it was not desert but paradise. But we are not yet finished with the mathematics, because Plato gave us more than just the rings. He gave us a landscape. Behind the great city Colon to the south, he describes a rectangular plain, smooth, level, enclosed by mountains. He gives measurements for this plain as well. 3,000 stadia in one direction, he writes, 2,000 in the other, a perfect rectangle carved into the earth, providing farmland for the maritime empire. Now, when scholars read this passage, they typically pause, they note the specificity, and they dismiss it. Because how could Plato know the dimensions of an imaginary plane? Why would he bother to invent such details? Unless, of course, he was describing something real. So let us return to the satellite images. Let us look south from the eye of the Sahara. And there, stretching across Mauritania and Mali, is the Taoudeni Basin, a vast rectangular depression in the Sahara, flat as a mirror, surrounded by higher terrain. And when we measure this basin, when we trace its dimensions, the proportions align, not perfectly. Erosion and time have softened the edges. But the fundamental geometry, the rectangular form oriented just as Plato described, it is there, visible from space, like the rings themselves, as if the very bones of the earth were arranged to match an ancient text. But Plato gives us one more detail. He describes mountains to the north of the city, mountains that sheltered Atlantis from the northern winds, that provided fresh water from their slopes. And when we look north from Richat, we find the Adrar Plateau, a raised massif of ancient stone rising from the desert floor, positioned precisely where Plato's account would place it. Now, let us pause here. Let us consider what we have assembled, a series of concentric rings matching Plato's measurements, a rectangular plain to the south matching his description, mountains to the north matching his geography. Any one of these correspondences might be dismissed. Coincidence is possible in isolation. But when you layer correspondence upon correspondence, when the measurements align and the orientation aligns and the landscape features align, at what point does coincidence become implausible? At what point do we acknowledge that the map matches the territory, that the ancient text describes a real place? This is the question that hangs in the air above the Richat structure. This is the mathematics of memory, numbers preserved across millennia, waiting for the age of satellites, waiting for us to see from the proper height. But there is a problem that has prevented mainstream archaeology from embracing this correlation. And that problem is water. Because when you stand at the Richat structure today, you stand in one of the driest places on Earth. The Sahara Desert stretches in all directions, sand and stone and silence, no rivers, no lakes, no ocean, and Plato's Atlantis was a maritime civilization, a city of canals, of harbors, of ships that sailed beyond the Pillars of Hercules. How could such a place exist where nothing now grows, where the nearest ocean is hundreds of miles away? This is the objection that has kept the theory at the margins. This is the pillar that must be addressed, and so we must journey backward into deep time, we must visit the Sahara. As it once was before the sand, this is the second pillar, the evidence of water, and the water was everywhere. Let us go back. 15,000 years, the world is emerging from the last ice age. Glaciers are retreating, sea levels are rising, and weather patterns are shifting. In North Africa, something remarkable is happening. Monsoons from the Atlantic are pushing inland. Rain, torrential rain, is falling on what will one day be desert. Scientists call this period the African humid period, and it transformed the Sahara into something our modern minds struggle to imagine. A savanna, lush and green, rivers cutting through the landscape, flowing north toward the Mediterranean. Lakes, vast lakes, covering hundreds of thousands of square miles. The largest was Lake Chad. At its peak, this single body of water was larger than the Caspian Sea, larger than all the Great Lakes combined, an inland sea teeming with fish, surrounded by forests and grasslands. And this is not speculation. We have evidence, written in sediment and stone. Cores drilled from the Sahara reveal lake deposits, layers of mud and clay from this wetter age. Fossilized pollen tells us what grew there. Acacia trees, grasses, vegetation that required steady rainfall. And the animals, the bones scattered across what is now desert. Hippos, crocodiles, elephants, creatures that cannot survive without abundant water. They lived in the Sahara. They thrived there for 10,000 years. Now, imagine the Richat structure during this period. Not isolated in endless sand, but positioned on the edge of habitability, perhaps near the coast of an ancient Atlantic bay, perhaps on an island in a vast river delta. The exact configuration we cannot know, but the possibility of water access is no longer in question. The Sahara was blue, and people lived there. This, too, is not speculation. Rock art covers the Sahara. Thousands of petroglyphs and paintings, images of hunters, herders, fishermen, boats carved into stone, hundreds of miles from the nearest modern shore. One site, Tassili Najer in Algeria, preserves paintings of people swimming, of cattle drinking from rivers, of a world utterly unlike the desert that surrounds these images today. The people who created this art, they knew the Green Sahara. They witnessed its abundance, and here is where the timeline becomes intriguing. Because the African humid period did not end gradually. Around 5,000 years ago, the climate shifted, the monsoons weakened, then failed, the rain stopped coming, and the Sahara dried, not over millennia, but over centuries, perhaps over mere generations. Lake Chad shrank, rivers disappeared, vegetation withered. The desert we know today spread like a stain across North Africa, and any civilization that had flourished during the humid period would have faced catastrophe, their water sources vanishing, their farmland turning to dust, their maritime access retreating as coastlines shifted and waterways dried. Now, let us return to Plato. He tells us that Atlantis was destroyed 9,000 years before the time of Solon. Solon visited Egypt around 600 BCE. 9,000 years before that brings us to approximately 9,600 BCE. 11,500 years ago, right in the middle of the African humid period, when the Sahara was green, when water was abundant, when a maritime civilization at the Richat structures would have been entirely possible. But there is a complication, as there always is. Because 9600 BCE is earlier than the final drying of the Sahara. The desert did not take hold until around 3000 BCE, a gap of more than 6,000 years, so either Plato's chronology is wrong, or the destruction of Atlantis was not the drying of the Sahara itself, but something else, something more sudden. And here, we must introduce another layer to this mystery, another event recorded in stone and ice. The Younger Dryas, around 10,800 BCE. The world was warming. The Ice Age was ending, gradually, predictably. And then, something happened. Temperatures plunged, the warming trend reversed. Almost overnight in geological terms, for 1,300 years the Earth returned to near glacial conditions. This period is called the Younger Dryas, after a cold weather flower that suddenly reappeared in the fossil record. And then, just as suddenly, it ended. Around 9600 BCE, the same date Plato gives for the destruction of Atlantis. Now, coincidence is possible, but the alignment is noteworthy. What caused the Younger Dryas is still debated. Some scientists point to a comet impact, fragments striking the ice sheets. Others suggest a massive meltwater flood disrupting ocean currents. But the effects are not in question. Rapid climate shifts, rising seas, catastrophic weather, megafauna extinctions, the end of many large Ice Age animals, and human cultures disrupted. Now imagine a coastal civilization in North Africa, a city built on the principles of water management, canals and harbors, positioned during the African humid period when the Sahara was habitable, and then the Younger Dryas ends. Sea levels rise dramatically as ice melts. Weather patterns shift, possibly altering the monsoons that fed the Green Sahara. Tsunamis from ice shelf collapses. If the impact hypothesis is correct, such an event could destroy a maritime civilization, could flood its harbors, collapse its canals, scatter its people, and then, over the following millennia, as the African humid period continued but weakened, as the Sahara slowly dried, the ruins would be preserved, buried under advancing sand, hidden from the ages until astronauts, looking down from orbit, saw the pattern, saw the rings, and recognized, perhaps, the geometry described in an ancient text. This is the second pillar, the evidence of water and the evidence of catastrophe. The Sahara was not always desert. It was once a place where civilizations could flourish, where rivers flowed and boats sailed and cities rose. And then the water left, leaving only the geometry behind, leaving only the circles in the sand. We have now two pillars standing, the mathematical precision of Plato's measurements, matching the Richat structure, and the geological evidence of water, abundant water during the relevant time period. But pillars require foundations, they require physical evidence. And it is to the ground itself that we must now turn, to the stone and what it remembers. The Richat structure, when you stand within it, is not immediately recognizable as the circular pattern we see from space. From the ground, it is simply terrain, rock formations, weathered ridges, scattered stone. But there is something unusual about these rocks, something that becomes apparent when you begin to examine them closely. The structure is composed of alternating bands, of different types of stone, resistant quartzite ridges forming the raised rings, softer limestone and dolomite eroded into the valleys between them. This alternation, this pattern of hard and soft, creates the natural concentric circles. Geologists tell us this is simply differential erosion, that wind and time have carved away the softer stone, leaving the harder ridges standing. And this is true, but there is something else in the stone, something the wind alone did not carve. In the valleys between the rings, in the depressions where the softer stone has eroded, there are patterns, smooth, rounded channels that meander through the limestone, the unmistakable signature of water erosion, not the sharp angular cuts of wind-blown sand, but the gentle, patient, flowing curves that only water creates. Water moving through these channels over long periods of time, wearing the stone smooth, creating pathways that still remain, though the water is gone. In some places, these channels are quite deep, deep enough to suggest not just rainfall, not just seasonal flooding, but sustained water flow, the kind of flow you would expect from canals or harbors, or the constant circulation between rings of water, just as Plato described. And then there are the deposits within the sedimentary layers of the Richat and in the surrounding region. Researchers have found something unexpected: marine fossils, the fossilized remains of creatures that lived in oceans, shells, coral fragments, the microscopic skeletons of marine organisms pressed into stone from a time when these rocks were beneath the sea. Now, some of these fossils are very ancient, from the Paleozoic era, hundreds of millions of years ago, when this entire region was indeed ocean floor. But there are also more recent deposits, salt deposits, scattered throughout the Sahara, the residue of evaporated seawater from more recent geological times, from the periods when the Sahara was not yet fully desert, when shallow seas, lagoons, and vast lakes covered portions of what is now sand. The presence of both saltwater and freshwater indicators is telling. It suggests a complex hydrological environment, not simply an inland site, but a transitional zone, a place where ocean and land met and mingled. Exactly the kind of place where Plato's Atlantis was said to exist. On an island but connected to a plain, with access to both the open oceans and inland waterways. But perhaps the most intriguing physical evidence is not found at the Richat itself. It is found scattered across the Sahara. Objects that should not be there. Objects that speak of a maritime culture in the middle of what is now the world's largest desert. They are called anchor stones, large stones carved and shaped, with holes drilled through them, the unmistakable form of ancient anchors, found hundreds of miles from any modern coastline, found in places where no ocean has existed in recorded history. These stones are heavy, deliberately shaped, purposefully modified. They are not natural formations. They are tools for mooring boats in harbors that no longer exist, tools for securing vessels in waters that have long since vanished into the sand. Mainstream archaeology has struggled to explain these artifacts. Some suggest they were carved by much more recent peoples, who simply copied ancient maritime designs. Others argue they might have been transported from distant coastal regions for reasons unknown. But there are so many of them, scattered across regions that we now know were once underwater. During the Green Sahara period, during the times when the Richat structure could have been a port. And there is more. Around the Richat, within a radius of several dozen miles, archaeologists have documented prehistoric tool sites, stone implements, worked flint, the debris of ancient human activity now. Such sites are common in North Africa. The Sahara, during its humid phases, was densely populated. But the concentration around Richat is notable, and some of these sites show evidence of sophisticated culture. About 600 miles to the east of Richat, there is a place called Nabta Playa. In southern Egypt, it is one of the world's most enigmatic prehistoric sites, dating to approximately 7,000 years ago, perhaps older. Nabta Playa contains megalithic structures, stone circles, carefully arranged, aligned with astronomical precision to track the summer solstice, a prehistoric calendar built by people who understood the movements of the heavens. This site predates the Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years. It predates most of what we consider ancient civilization, and it proves conclusively that North Africa during the Green Sahara period was home to cultures capable of large-scale construction, capable of astronomical observation, capable of sophisticated organization. So when we ask, could a maritime civilization have existed at Richat? Could people have built harbors, carved channel, constructed concentric walls? The answer, from the archaeological record, is yes. The people were here. The water was here. The capability, it was here, and then the water left. This is the third pillar, the physical evidence, written in stone and sediment, the signatures of water erosion, where now there is only drought, the presence of marine deposits. In the heart of a desert, the anchor stones, scattered like breadcrumbs across an ancient seabed, and the archaeological proof that sophisticated cultures thrived here. In the window of time when Atlantis could have existed. But there remained a final question. Why did it end? Why did the Green Sahara become the Dead Sahara? Why did the water drain away? And could this transformation have been sudden enough, catastrophic enough, to destroy a civilization and bury it forever? For this, we must look to climate, to the history of Earth's atmosphere, its temperature, its rainfall, to the forces that govern whether a region blooms with life or withers into silence. The African humid period, that 10,000-year window of abundance, did not end gently. For much of the 20th century, scientists believed the Sahara's desertification was gradual, a slow drying over thousands of years. But more recent research paints a different picture. Analysis of marine sediment cores taken from the Atlantic Ocean floor off the coast of West Africa shows something remarkable. These cores contain layers of dust, wind-blown particles from the Sahara, carried out to sea and settled on the ocean bottom. By examining these layers, scientists can reconstruct how much dust was blowing off the Sahara at different points in history. More dust means more desert, less dust means more vegetation, holding the soil in place. And what these cores reveal is a sharp transition. Around 5,500 years ago, the dust layers suddenly increase. Dramatically, not over millennia, but over centuries, perhaps Within the span of a few human lifetimes, the Sahara transformed from a green landscape of lakes and river to the hyper-arid desert we know today in what amounts to an ecological blink. This is called the Holocene climate optimum's end, or sometimes the 5.9 kilo-year event, a rapid climate shift that transformed North Africa. The cause is related to orbital mechanics, the slow wobble of Earth's axis. The precession of the equinoxes changes the angle at which sunlight strikes different regions. During the African humid period, the tilt was such that African monsoons were strong. They penetrated deep into the Sahara, bringing seasonal rains. But as the orbital parameters shifted, the monsoons weakened. The rains came less frequently. Lakes evaporated. Rivers dried. Vegetation died. And without vegetation to retain moisture, the region became desert. A feedback loop that accelerated the process. What had been paradise became wasteland. Now, imagine you are a maritime civilization, your city built on the coast of a lake or inland sea, your economies dependent on fishing, on trade via water routes, your agriculture sustained by the annual floods, the predictable rains, and then the rains begin to fail. At first, perhaps it seems like a bad season, but then another year passes and another. The water level in your harbor begins to drop. Your boats sit on mud where once they floated. The crops in the surrounding plain wither in fields that receive no irrigation. The people begin to leave. At first, slowly, then in waves, seeking water, seeking food, seeking refuge, in lands less afflicted. And within a few generations, your great city, your concentric harbors, your geometric canals are abandoned, left to the advancing sand. This is the fourth pillar, the evidence of catastrophe, not a catastrophe of violence, not an invasion or a war, but a catastrophe of absence, the absence of water, the slow starvation of a civilization as its environment died. And the timeline matches Plato's account remarkably well. Plato wrote in the 4th century BCE. He claimed the story came through Solon, who had traveled to Egypt around 600 BCE. And the Egyptian priests told Solon that Atlantis had been destroyed 9,000 years before their time. If we add 9,000 years to 600 BCE, we arrive at approximately 9,600 BCE. That date falls at the end of the Younger Dryas, at the moment of catastrophic climate shifts, at the beginning of our current warm period. It does not align with the final desertification of the Sahara around 5,500 years ago. But what if the story conflates two periods of destruction? What if the Younger Dryas impact around 9,600 BCE began the process, perhaps flooding coastal settlements, disrupting early cultures, and then The final desiccation around 5,500 years ago completed it. The Egyptian chronology is notoriously difficult to interpret. Their concept of time was cyclical rather than linear. Numbers were often symbolic. It is possible the 9,000 years is not meant literally, but rather indicates a very ancient time, a time before what the Egyptians considered the beginning of their own history. What we do know with certainty is that a civilization at the Richat structure during the African humid period would have been destroyed by the rapid desertification. Its harbors would have dried, its canals would have filled with sand, its people would have scattered, and the structure itself, that remarkable geometric formation, would have been preserved, buried under the advancing dunes, protected from further erosion by the very desert that killed it, waiting until curious eyes from orbit spotted the pattern and wondered what it meant. This is the foundation upon which our 4 pillars rest, the mathematical precision of measurements that match, the geological evidence of abundant water, the physical traces of human activity and maritime culture, and the climatic catastrophe that explains both destruction and preservation. 4 pillars, each standing alone, might be dismissed. A curious coincidence here, a suggestive pattern there, but together they form something stronger, a structure of evidence that mirrors the structure in the sand, concentric rings of possibility, each supporting the next. Let us walk through them once more, slowly, in the gathering dusk. The first pillar is the mathematics. Plato describes Atlantis with unusual specificity, not in vague poetic terms, but in measurements. The central island, 1 stadium in diameter. The first ring of water, 1 stadium wide. The first ring of land, 2 stadia. The second ring of water, 2 stadia. The second ring of land, 3 stadia. And outward, in this alternating pattern, when we convert these ancient measurements to modern units and overlay them upon the Richat structure, we find correspondence, not perfect. Nothing in nature is perfect, but the scale matches, the proportions align. The central dome of the Richat measures close to 1 stadium. The concentric ridges spaced in intervals that echo Plato's description. 3 major rings clearly visible even from orbit. Could this be chance? Perhaps. Circular geological formation are not unknown, but when Plato adds that this city faced a rectangular plain to the south, and we find the Taudeni Basin stretching southward from Richat, a vast rectangular depression that was once filled with water. the coincidence becomes more difficult to dismiss. And when he mentions mountains to the north, protecting the city from cold winds, and we observe the Adrar Plateau rising to the north of the structure, the pattern deepens. This is not one detail matching, but multiple details. A constellation of correspondences, geometric and geographic, as if someone long ago measured this place, recorded its dimensions, and that record survived in Greek philosophy. The second pillar is the water, because, of course, the immediate objection arises: how could Atlantis, a maritime civilization, a city of harbors and canals, exist in the Sahara Desert, the driest place on the planet's surface? But the desert has not always been a desert. This is no speculation, no fringe theory. This is established science, confirmed by decades of research. The African humid period, lasting from roughly 15,000 years ago until 5,500 years ago, during which the Sahara was green, fed by a strengthened monsoon system, air currents shifted by the Earth's orbital variations. Rain fell where now only dust blows. Lakes formed, rivers flowed, vegetation spread across the sand. Lake Chad swelled to the size of the Caspian Sea. River systems snaked across what is now empty desert, and the Atlantic Ocean pushed inland through these networks, creating coastlines, estuaries, navigable waterways. The Richat structure during this period would not have been landlocked. It sits at an elevation that would have placed it near water, perhaps on a coastline, perhaps on an island in a vast lake, perhaps at the nexus of several waterways, a natural harbor, protected by those concentric ridges, accessible to ships from the Atlantic. This is not imagination. This is reconstruction based on sediment cores, on pollen analysis, on the mapping of ancient lake beds. The water was there, and it lasted for thousands of years, long enough for a civilization to rise, to build, to trade, to prosper. And then the climate shifted. The rains failed, and the water withdrew. The third pillar is the physical evidence, because a city of stone and metal, of harbors and temples, should leave traces, and it does, though not in the way we might expect. The Richat structure itself is composed of alternating rock types, harder quartzites that resist erosion, softer limestones and dolomites that wear away more easily. This creates the natural concentric pattern. But between these ridges, in the depressions where the rings would channel water, we find sediments, both marine and freshwater, suggesting that these channels once held water from different sources: salt from the ocean, minerals from inland lakes. Exactly as Plato described, a city with access to both. and throughout the Sahara, but concentrated in certain regions, including the area around Richat. Archaeologists have found anchor stones, large stones with holes bored through them, of the type used by ancient vessels to secure boats in harbors found now hundreds of miles from any coast, lying in the sand, like the bones of a forgotten maritime culture. There are tool sites as well, evidence of human activity, stone implements, grinding stones, the remnants of settlements, carbon dated to the African humid period. And when we look more broadly at North African cultures of this era, we find sophistication that challenges our assumptions. Nabta Playa in Egypt, with its stone circle aligned to the stars, built 7,000 years ago, before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, proving that the people of the Green Sahara were not primitive nomads, but organized societies capable of astronomical observation, monumental construction, complex planning. Why not a maritime civilization at Richat? Why not a people who measured their city in stadia? The evidence does not prove it, but it permits it. It opens a door that conventional chronology keeps closed. And the fourth pillar is the catastrophe, because every civilization needs an ending. Plato tells us that Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night, swallowed by the sea in a cataclysm of water and earthquakes. If Atlantis was at Richat, this description seems wrong. The Sahara dried. It did not flood, but consider what the drying would have meant. Not a gradual decline, but a rapid transformation. The geological record shows that the Sahara's desertification happened in pulses, relatively swift transitions from wet to dry. The final shift, around 5,500 years ago, was particularly abrupt. Within a few centuries, perhaps within generations, the rain stopped, the rivers dried, the lakes evaporated. For a maritime city dependent on water access, this would be apocalyptic, not a flood, but the opposite. The harbor mouth silting closed, the canal network turning to mud, then dust, ships stranded in their berths, trade routes cut off, food supplies failing, the very foundation of the civilization removed. From the perspective of those who lived through it, from those who remembered it generations later, would this not seem like divine punishment? Like the sea withdrawing? Like the earth swallowing their city? The story that reaches Plato, filtered through Egyptian priests, translated through Greek philosophers, might preserve the essential truth while transforming the mechanism. Atlantis was destroyed by water, but by its absence, not its presence. And here is where the theory reveals its greatest strength, because a city destroyed by flooding would be scattered, washed away, its stones tumbled, its streets obliterated. But a city abandoned to the desert, a city buried by advancing sand, would be preserved, protected from erosion, by the very dunes that covered it. The geometric perfection of the Richat structure. Those clean, concentric circles visible from space could only exist because the Sahara buried them, kept them under a protective blanket of sand, until the wind, patient sculptor that it is, began to uncover them again, revealing not pyramids, not temples, but geometry, the fundamental pattern, preserved in stone. This is why conventional archaeology finds no city. They search for structure. When the structure itself is the city, they search for artifact. When the artifact is topology, they search for what was built. When what remains is what was used, the rings themselves were the walls, the channels between them were the canals, the central dome was the Acropolis. Nature provided the architecture, and an ancient people adapted it, cut into the stone, built upon the ridges, worked with the landscape rather than against it, and when they left, when the water dried, the geology remained, waiting for Plato to record its measurements, waiting for satellites to photograph its form, waiting for someone to notice the correspondence. So here we stand, at the convergence of the four pillars, the mathematics, precise and matching, the climate, proven to have provided abundant water, the archaeology, suggestive of maritime culture and human activity, the catastrophe, explaining both destruction and preservation. Each pillar supports the others. Each answer raises deeper questions. Is this proof? No, science demands more rigorous evidence than correspondence and possibility. Excavation would be required. Systematic archaeology, carbon dating of structures. But the Richat structure lies in a remote region of Mauritania, difficult to access, politically unstable, archaeologically unexplored. What little investigation has occurred has focused on the geology, not on the possibility of human occupation, not on the question that Plato raises. And so the rings remain largely unexcavated, the central dome unexamined, the channels unmapped for archaeological remains, the anchor stones of the Sahara unstudied for their cultural context. Mainstream archaeology has decided Atlantis is myth. Plato was philosophizing, the Richat is geology, nothing more, case closed. But what if they are wrong? What if the most famous lost city in history has been hiding in plain sight? Visible from space, mapped by satellites, mentioned in every geography of Mauritania, but never recognized for what it might be, because the Sahara is a desert and Atlantis was surrounded by water. This is the limitation of linear thinking, the assumption that what is has always been, that the desert has always been desert, that the seas have always been at their current levels, that human civilization began only 5,000 years ago, but the Earth does not respect our assumptions. Climate shifts, seas rise and fall, and human history extends deeper than our textbooks suggest. The Richat structure, whether it is Atlantis or not, stands as a monument to geological time, to the impermanence of landscapes, to the possibility that everything we think we know about where we came from might need revision as the sun sets over the eye of the Sahara. The shadows lengthen across the concentric ridges. The wind carries dust across the ancient stones, and somewhere in the silence, you might hear an echo of water lapping against harbor walls, of voices calling in languages lost to time, of a civilization that thrived when the desert was blue. Or perhaps you hear only wind, only the whisper of sand against stone, only the eternal quiet of the empty places. The truth lies buried beneath the dunes, beneath the dogma, waiting for the right questions, waiting for the patient excavation of evidence and open minds. Until then, we have only the circles, the geometry, perfect and patient, the measurements that match a Greek philosopher's tale, the memory preserved in stone and sand. Atlantis, whether myth or history, reminds us that civilizations rise and fall, that the earth transforms on timescales beyond human reckoning, that what seems permanent is temporary, and what seems lost might only be hidden. The night deepens over the Richat structure. The stars appear in their ancient configurations, the same stars that shone on the green Sahara, the same stars that watched the water withdraw. If you could hover high above the eye, looking down as astronauts do, you would see the circles glowing faintly in moonlight, a pattern emerging from chaos, a memory written in the earth itself. And you might wonder, as we all wonder, what other secrets does the Sahara keep? What other structures lie beneath the sand? What other stories wait to be told? This is the gift of the eye of the Sahara. Not proof, but possibility. Not certainty, but invitation to look again at what we think we know, to question the boundaries of history, to imagine what might have been. The four pillars stand, the rings endure, and somewhere in the space between evidence and myth, Atlantis waits. Perhaps at Richat, perhaps elsewhere, perhaps nowhere at all. But the question itself is worth asking. The search itself is worth pursuing, because in the end, what we seek is not just a lost city, but understanding of who we are, where we come from, and what we might become. The desert wind stirs the sand, the circles hold their form, and we continue to wonder, in the spaces between, what was and what might have been, in the silence of the eye of the Sahara. Now, We come to the quiet, to the place where investigation gives way to reflection, where the search for Atlantis becomes something deeper, a meditation on memory and forgetting, on what survives when civilizations fall. Consider for a moment the irony. The world's most famous lost city, the subject of countless expeditions across every ocean, might have been visible from space all along, a formation so large it can only truly be seen from orbit, too vast to recognize when standing within it, but perfectly clear when viewed from above, like so many truths that hide in plain sight, visible only when we gain perspective, when we step back far enough to see the pattern. This is what the Richat structure offers. Whether it is Atlantis or simply itself, a reminder that the earth keeps secrets, that geography is not fixed, that the desert was once an ocean, and what seems impossible today might have been commonplace 10,000 years ago. If a civilization did thrive here, in the green Sahara of the African humid period, what would that mean? It would mean that advanced culture arose in Africa, long before the pharaohs, long before the pyramids. It would mean that maritime technology existed earlier than our timelines suggest. It would mean that climate change has destroyed civilizations before, that what we build can be unmade, that the rise of humanity has not been a straight line, but a cycle of creation and loss, progress and collapse, building and burial. This is perhaps why the story of Atlantis has such power over our imagination. It speaks to a deep fear that everything we create could vanish, that our cities could be reclaimed by nature, that our greatest achievements might leave no trace but circles in the sand, and a story told by a philosopher, which brings us to Plato himself. Why did he preserve this tale? Why insist that it was history, not allegory? He was not a historian in the modern sense. He was a philosopher, interested in ideal forms, in the perfect republic, the just society. Yet in the dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he spends considerable time detailing Atlantis, its geography, its measurements, its governance, its resources, its military, its eventual pride. Why such specificity if the whole thing is invented? Perhaps because he was working from a source, from Egyptian records that no longer exist, from a memory of something real, something that happened in the deep past and was recorded by people who valued such thing. The Egyptians were meticulous record keepers. Their priests, scholars, maintained libraries of knowledge, most of which has been lost, burned in Alexandria, scattered by conquest, dissolved by time and moisture and neglect. What we have are fragments, references to texts that no longer exist, hints of knowledge now forgotten. And one Greek philosopher who claims that an Egyptian priest told his ancestor Solon about a city that matched certain measurements and certain patterns and certain geographical features that can still be found if you know where to look, in the heart of the Sahara, where the desert remembers when it was sea. The stars wheel overhead as they have for millennia, the same constellation that ancient navigators used to cross the water that once surrounded Richat. If they existed, the wind continues its patient work, grain by grain, revealing and concealing, uncovering stone, then covering it again, the endless cycles of the desert, and we are left with questions, beautiful questions that may never be answered. Was Atlantis real? Is it at Richat or somewhere else? Beneath the waves? Or nowhere except in our collective memory? The answer might matter less than we think, because the true gift of the mystery is the wonder it provokes, the questions it raises about time and memory, about what we know and what we assume, about the difference between the two. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the eye of the Sahara from above, those perfect circles etched in earth, visible from orbit, invisible from within, a pattern that persists long after its purpose is forgotten, long after its builders have become dust, if dust they were. The geometry endures, the circles hold, and somewhere in the structure, in the spaces between the rings, memory sleeps, waiting for the right question, waiting for the patient archaeologist, waiting for the shift in perspective that reveals what was always there. Let the mystery rest for now. Let the wind blow over the ancient stones. Let the stars continue their watch, and let yourself sink into the quiet, into the space between waking and dreaming, where Atlantis lives, not as history and not as myth, but as possibility, as wonder, as circle. In the sand, the desert sleeps, the eye watches, and we remember what might have been in the blue Sahara so long ago. Rest now, the search can wait. The circles will endure until morning. This video is intended for entertainment, relaxation, and sleep. The content explores alternative historical theories, ancient mysteries, and interpretations that are not universally accepted by mainstream academia. We encourage viewers to conduct their own research